Check, 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 check. Good morning, YouTube friends. All right, let's get right to it. We're not going to dink around today. We're just going to get right to it. So, yesterday I live streamed and kind of went through critiquing different things. And this was the shot that seemed to be the first one to pop onto my list, demanding some attention. And the problem I had with it is, first of all, the way he squints his eyes, does this, is too slow. It doesn't feel right to me. Second of all, this motion could arguably be tweened better. There's quite a big jump right there. But just as importantly, when I went in and looked at the project in OpenTunes, I found that there were quite a few what I would just call kludgy patches to sort of make it work. You know, it's a classic example of back when I did this, which was probably like in March. And, you know, I was still learning my process, learning my tools. And some of the steps I took in this shot, ostensibly to save time and leverage what I had already done, it turns out you don't get that leverage. This is something I've touched upon in other videos, but I think I've learned over and over and over, is that the fast way is the slow way. And by the way, I think Richard Williams says something almost exactly like that in his book, The Animator's Survival Kit. So the fast way is the slow way is the fast way. In other words, if it's not right, just freaking redo it, because in the long run it'll be faster. Here's the other reason why. If you look at these icons, you can see that these are basically splashes of color where I took an animation that wasn't working and then basically painted over top of it to sort of make it work, and tried to use the plastic tool. You know what? Okay, if you don't know what the plastic tool is, I'll summarize it in 10 seconds. You're taking a drawing and then you're putting bones over it that allow you to deform the drawing. That's it. It's kind of like in Krita, it's kind of like the liquefy tool, it's kind of like in the Blender grease pencil, the fact that anything can be bent and squished around and you can animate that way. Well, the takeaway is that tools like that, when you're earlier in your process, are very seductive. Like, that's going to save me a lot of time. What you find out is it does save you time if you get it right. Okay, so if whatever you do using those tools actually is correct and looks great and, you know, doesn't require redoing or improvement, then yes, those tools can save you time. But the overarching lesson that I've learned is usually it's better to scrap the shot, redraw it, re-ink it, re-everything, and then just continually on an ongoing basis commonsensically learn areas where you can leverage within the shot. But the short story is that this shot has a lot of garbage in it that is most aptly evidenced by the fact that when I look at the X sheet, I can't actually figure out what was going on or what I was thinking at the time. So with that in mind, I redid the shot. And so here's the redo, which I redid in Krita. I just decided I'm just going to redraw it and do some keyframes. Better pacing there, better pacing, better motion, better characterization. In other words, this looks like Ninja 1, the character. This kind of sort of does, but kind of sort of doesn't. This is really more the guy that I'm trying to capture. So the eyes squint more quickly. It's on 2s. I think it's 3 keyframes. Here it's more blah blah blah. Well, it's actually on 3s. Thing I've learned is that usually, if put it this way, if my hand has to get from here to here, okay, all that matters is how long from a timing standpoint does it take to get from here to here. So I'm going to draw this keyframe, I'm going to draw this keyframe. So boom, boom. Now, all that matters is how long did that take? Did it take 1/4 of a second? Okay. That means here's a keyframe, here's a keyframe. It's going to be 6 frames. It's going to be on 2s. That means there has to be one tween, 2, 4, 6, right? And that's what you have to figure out. What I'm learning to sort of adhere to the aesthetics of anime as I'm going through the old shots, is that there's too many places where I did things on 3s and 4s. It really just doesn't work. It doesn't look right. It looks choppy or whatever. So the kind of rule of thumb is you really need to animate on 2s when things are moving. Now, in anime, obviously, a lot of times things aren't moving. You have a static face like this. If I was talking in an anime shot, my head wouldn't move, but all that would move would be my mouth. And my chin wouldn't even move. It'd be... Okay, and that's fine. That is consistent with the aesthetic we expect from anime. And it can be quite entertaining. It's fine. So we don't need a lot of this going on while you're talking. This is actually the problem with a lot of CGI, even today. It certainly is in video games. There's a character that's striking a dramatic pose. Well, in a lot of games, what happens is you don't see this. What you see is this. Everything flows, and it looks stupid. Why? Because they're doing motion capture, and the actors that are doing the motion capture are being paid, and I guess they feel like they need to be doing something. And so they don't understand the essence. One of the key things about acting, and especially comedy, is the idea of the hold. So if my hand is acting, this is not a particularly effective action. This, that is. So, as an animator, that's a good thing, because what that means is that to get from here to here, that can happen in with one tween that's just a bunch of blur. You actually can't see it. I could do a really crappy drawing between this and this, and it'll still look good because it goes by so fast. So that's a real boon to us as animators, because really the most important thing is the keys and the holds. So where you run into a little bit of a problem, which I did here, is when, well, in this case, I actually timed it wrong. The number of tweens to get his eye to go like this, he's just going, okay. 2 drawings was completely right, but it shouldn't have been on 3s. It should have been on 2s. So, anyway, that's kind of the explanation of that. So that's fixed. And then I've kind of followed this thing through here, too. You can see it here in Krita. Let me go to the actual layer that's animated. You can see that I put the eye action on 2s. And then I had this motion where he's climbing up the wall, okay? Which is cool because it flows better into the next shot, like that, see? Okay, so it's a better edit. Let me turn that shot off one more time, and you'll see what we had before. It's like it's not bad, but it's not good. That's kind of what you get a lot of times. It's not bad, but it's not good. Okay, so one of the key things I did here was I had this steady motion between these tweens. And I thought, well, it feels like that concept of holds maybe comes to bear here, because what really should be happening is he gets his grip, then pulls himself, which means there's a hold in between. So in this case, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's on 6s. Felt right. You could get away with stretching this out, probably. Could be, see, that works as well. And going back here, you know what, that might not be a bad idea. Let's do that. Let's pull this back a little bit. Stretch this out, and this is going up to about 72 now. Yeah, I mean, it's rendering up to 90, so that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and render that. I actually like that longer pause better. Okay. And maybe what we should also do, just to be extra good, is let's just put in a couple more keys. So what I'm doing is I'm moving the center point kind of to his elbow, so that this way he's going to actually move off the screen, which I think probably provides a better continuity into this shot. Because this pause and then he's moving again, I'm not sure I like that. So, okay, so that's fine. Let's render that. I believe I'm in the conversions folder. Okay, so I want to just test this real quick to see if it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the project in Blender and create a new Blender file so that all the video files are not open. That way I can go back here to my render conversions folder, convert that real quick to a motion JPEG, and then drag that into the render folder. It needs to replace the destination, and now the edit should be properly updated. So okay, that's fine. So now what we need to do is pull that back a little bit. Let's see, he lands there, so honestly, let me check this. There is leg moves, so I'm going to say let's do that. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Okay, so now I think we could just stretch that out of frame. Let's see what the overall flow looks like. Here's a shot I redid a couple days ago. Okay, so she rolls over. Ninja 1 grimaces at the other guy, starts to climb up the wall. And now Akari notices there's something funky going on here. Okay, good. So that's great. Now the question is, do we go ahead with ink and paint, or do we go on to the next shot and leave it as a sort of a pencil test cut into the show? Frankly, it's really tempting to leave it as a pencil test, but I think I would rather okay, put it this way. From the standpoint of pitching the concept, I feel like it's actually kind of cool if there's some rough shots left into the edit. On the other hand, I really would like to have the practice, of cleaning this up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so let's turn this down. How are we doing on time? 12 minutes, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, with the ninjas, we've usually used like a charcoal color for the ink. So let's call this the ink layer. And what we'll do here is we'll come down here and we'll say let's add an existing layer, and it's going to be layer 2, which is pencil test. And now I should have created the layers in the timeline because then they stick to the timeline. So there's that. We really don't need the background layers in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a key right here, and now let me just see here. So you got this change of expression. Okay, so I would say this is going to be his head. I'm going to call this ink head. Okay, and then let's add a new layer, and we're going to call this ink face. Alright, so here we're going to have a key, and 1, 2, 3. So his eyes and yeah, it's mainly just his eyes are going to be animated on this layer, whereas this will be the backdrop behind it, which is going to be just his head. So now when we get to here we should insert, well, actually, this could probably be distorted to make it work. So let's put in 2 keys there, and then from there on, it's all got to be drawn. Okay, let me check one thing here. Nah, that's really a fast transition, but it works because he actually is moving that quickly. So with that in mind, we're going to have a slight modification here. That can, in other words, here we could rotate the head and move the eyes, and it still looks correct. And by the way, this is another reason why I wanted to go ahead and do ink and paint on this shot, is because I want to really rigorously think about what moves, what doesn't move, what can remain static and should be on a different layer from other elements of the shot. Here, we really need to redraw that. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to put a key on both layers. The reason being that on the face layer, we're going to essentially put a key there just so that it becomes invisible, because the entire face is going to transition to this layer. And then we're going to need one. Okay, so now his arms are essentially, the costume is black. So here we're going to be able to just distort the, well, I should say use the animate tool to rotate the face. So in other words, what I'm saying is from here on, everything can be drawn once here, and everything from here forward can actually be done with the animate tool, just the way I did it in the sketch. So in other words, like here, we can break the arm here and just rotate it, and then maybe paint a little bit over top. So that means that there's no fresh drawing that needs to happen here. So that's fine. So I'm actually going to change the name of this layer from ink face to ink face / arm, so that I sort of remember that that was what I intended. Okay, so that means that all we need to do here is ink the eyes and eyebrows on one layer and the rest of his face on another layer. So let me just double check that and make sure I've got that right. All this motion here in the band is erroneous. That's just from redrawing it. That's so that I introduced some chatter that was not really desirable. So I'm going to go ahead and pretty much trace this. And by the way, I think I want my stabilizer on here. Okay, and I want to be fairly meticulous on the quality of these lines, pretty much in keeping with what I had in the sketch. Okay, so now I'm going to hit the erase tool so that I can just, okay, so now what I'm going to do, again, a lot of things I'm doing right now, I am trying to undo some things that I would say were bad habits earlier in the process. Okay, so one of those things is I need to flip the canvas frequently. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten this guy up right here. So what's the lesson here? This brush sucks for inking. It's great for sketching when you want to be able to quickly do thicker and thinner lines, but when it comes to inking, it's basically worthless. Okay, so that's fine. Okay. Alright, now his eyes are basically dots here. Is that really what we want? I think so. There are some places later in the show where, yeah, forget what I was about to say. Honestly, I think that this look should hold sway, which is to have simple dots for his eyes. Now, having said that, let's go slightly gray, just enough to see it. And I'm hitting, in my case, I've got the tilde key on the keyboard set to isolate a layer, which is like soloing, if you will. So I'm just going to color that in, and I'm going to go to behind mode and hit fill. Okay, and so there's his eyes back to normal mode, and then hit the tilde key again so that it's no longer being soloed. Okay, so now we need the head to be in there, and I can just sample that charcoal color so I get the exact correct color for the inking. Okay, and here we've got some, arguably some sloppiness that needs to be addressed. Okay, and this is going to go like that. that. Okay. There's that. I think we'll flip to get this one. Okay, hold on. Okay, stop. This is what I'm talking about. Stop everything. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to go back to this layer. Okay, look at this. Look at the eyes. I didn't even see that. Until I flipped it, I didn't even see it. That's horrible. Sucks. Forget it. Not acceptable. Just get rid of it. Redo it, baby. Alright, so here we go. The stabilizer's making filling this in rather difficult. Okay. Okay, so the actual problem is not so much the drawing as the positioning, and the problem is that positioning is wrong in the pencil test. Golly, frankly, let's flip that and see if I'm right. Yep. I think it actually could come a bit that way. But yeah, that's way more balanced, so. Oh, sounds like it's time for Zuko to get up. Zuko the African gray parrot. Okay. So there will have to be a little bit of hand painting involved here. What's going on over there?
Oh, he did a pretty pathetic squeak. Normally it squeaks pretty loud.
Okay.
That was pathetic. He went,
Okay, so that's, yeah, well, that's what he always does when I'm covering the cage up. I'll say time to go night night, and he'll be like, It's funny, you know. I think that for most people, if you didn't have an African gray parrot, you would not believe. You probably would not believe if I told you how contextually intelligent their communication is. He says a lot of things that are very that demonstrate that he understands what's going on around him, and he puts ideas together very intelligently. And there's a lot of contextual commentary. So if I pick up my cell phone, he'll see it from across the room, and he will make this little bloom bloom sound that's literally the exact sound that my phone makes when it gets turned on. If I'm putting the dog in her kennel, he will say, "Good girl," while I'm doing it. So he's watching everything that goes on, and seems to have opinions about a lot of it. So anyway, okay, we got the eyes balanced now, so that's good. And I think we can turn this back on. And now when I flip the canvas, you know, it's not absolutely freaking perfect, but it's pretty close. Now, I guess if I was going to adjust it any more, what I probably would do, I'm going to say what I would probably do is make this slightly bigger. And I think go there. Let me look. Yeah. Okay, so that's even a little bit more improvement. If we moved it in a bit. Yep. Let's go with that. I mean, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough. So, all right, back to inking the head. Now let's turn that off just so we're not distracted by the lines. And boom, boom, boom. That looks fine. That looks fine. And that looks fine. Alrighty then. Let's solo that layer. I'm just looking for leaks. Like right there, there's a leak. All right, and another thing, by the way, that I want to look for, let me think here for a second. I think I mapped the Q key to my stabilizer. Let's see if I'm right. So if I hit Alt Q, yes, that turns off the stabilizer. I strongly recommend that. Mapping a hotkey to your stabilizer or your whatever your smoothing algorithm is highly well advised, because it's so clunky to constantly having to jump back and forth. Right now I just hit the Q key and stabilizing's turned on, Alt Q and it's turned back off. So let's go to our layers and turn the solo off, by the way. And we don't need that gray background. And okay, so I think we can go ahead and deal with color. So importantly, do we really want to reference this for our color? Let me see something here. Probably for consistency we should. So what I'm going to do is hit Control Print Screen, and I'm just going to copy this into Krita, and then I'll use the Animate tool to drag this. You can see all my screens that I have going here. So I'll just drag this to here, so that's approximately the same size. And now we can just hit the Fill tool and sample that color, and wango bango, we're in business. Now, it would probably be, best practices are to keep characters in groups. So I don't want to get sloppy and lazy here. And it's also to separate ink and paint and shadows into different layers. So I'm going to go paint, and boom, boom. This should be black. This should be black. This should be black. And this is going to be sort of a, well, that's pretty darn close right there. Let me double check that. Well, see, I had that colored wrong in the original. So, okay, and now having done this, let's go here, paint his ear in. And now what I want to do is go really close here, sample the charcoal color, and in my ink layer, I want to go a little bit sloppy is fine on that. Okay. Okay, and by the way, this is where using the pencil might be okay. Let me go ahead and kill those, and let me just see how I like it. I think for this, not so much. But here, I think it'd be fine. Yeah. So there's no harm in having a little more subtlety to your lines. But what I'm finding is using the pencil is better done after the fact. Okay, so now with that, it's been almost a half hour. I'm going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll edit this back together later.